What's up, YouTube? Alright, so this is going to be episode 3 of the Batrium BMS Install. Now, before I get too far into this video, I want to say that I did record all of this video probably 6 or so months ago. Some of it is technically already out of date. Batrium is already on their WatchMon 4 and they've already updated their shunt. Having said that, I'm going to show you exactly what I did to install my Batrium kit. It is the WatchMon version 1, and the shunt I'm going to be installing, the model number is the SPF 102 MOD. Technically, they don't sell these anymore unless it is a request. I would imagine they probably do have a couple on hand. With all the new starter kits, you do get the newer shunt. So anyway, having all that out of the way, I'm going to be showing you how I installed the shunt, how I installed all the wires, and then I'm going to show you what I did for the rest of the Batrium install. I'm not going to go through any of the software really in this video. I might just do a quick overview kind of at the end of the video. Other than that, it's mainly what I did to install my Batrium kit into my Powerwall. I intended to get this video out a long time ago. It just never happened. I wasn't too happy with some of the video editing and some of the sound, but after a lot of editing, I think I kind of got it a little better. So let's get started. Alright, so before we actually get started, I was going to do a close-up view on the back of this plug here. If you can see the little numbers right there on the back. Pin 1 is on the top left, and then it goes to the right to pin 2. The lower left would be pin 3, and the lower right would be pin 4. And all of those are going to be hooked up directly to the WatchMon supervisor. Pin 3 goes to 12, and that's 5 volts DC from the WatchMon. Pin 2 goes to 13, and pin 4 goes to 14. Those are the inbound and outbound for the RX and TX. Pin 1 goes to 15, and that's ground. First thing we're going to do is cut off all the little terminals here. And just like the last video, I'm going to be using the Ethernet wire. And you can see how there's two different areas right here to crimp down. The one to the left actually crimps onto the wire insulation just to keep it from being pulled out. And then the one to the right is the one that you would actually crimp down to the wire. And that's the spot we're going to solder as well. And I don't have any crimps that will be this small, so I'm going to have to use these little pliers. Alright, next we're going to insert the clips into the back of the plug here. If you're using different color wires like I'm using, then you just have to remember which pin goes where. Technically, any of the wires that you stick in right now does not matter because you can match up the pin number to the WatchMon number later. But I'm going to go ahead and try to match up colors with certain pins. So 1 and 3 are the power wires, so I'm going to go with the blue. And there's really only one way these wires could go in. There's that little prong right there on the top. That prong is going to be on the top on the connector as well. And once it's fully seated, you'll hear it snap in place. You go ahead and just insert the wire into the connector. And you could hear it snap in place. So that was pin 1 on the plug, and that is ground. The other wire is going to be all blue with a white stripe. That's going to be my positive. Alright, so I'm going to call this the bottom side, which is pin 3 and 4. And you can see the prong in my left hand. That is facing up. And after those are in there, give them a little tug just to make sure they do not come out. Alright, so we got all the pins in there. Now we are going to re-sleeve it, and of course I will do that off camera since it takes just a couple of minutes. Alright, so I just sleeved the wires, and since this is kind of loose up here, I am going to put just a little dab of hot glue up here just to keep the sleeving from coming back, and then I'm going to put heat shrink over the top. Now I didn't pull too much of the insulation off, maybe just about 1/4 of an inch. Alright, so now I'm just going to back this out the other direction here. And I'm just going to leave a little bit of wire hanging out here and then heat shrink over the top. Now before I hook this up to the WatchMon, I'm actually going to put the WatchMon inside of the Dinkle DIN rail WatchMon holder Dinkle. My kit also came with the expansion board, which you don't actually need this. This is for a whole bunch of other options, which I'll probably do later on. Technically right now I don't need it installed, but I'm going to put it in here anyway. Now before you mount this, you can see the USB connection right here doesn't actually give you enough room to put the USB cable into it. That's about as far as it'll let you go. So the example they give you on the website is just to trim out some of the green right here. So that's what I'm going to do next. And all I'm going to do is put this together how it's going to actually sit and then mark it off. So that's all I did, is just marked off the edges, and then I'll probably use a razor blade just to cut it out. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is mount this to something that I can put in the power rack, and I do want it to be somewhat removable since later on I'll be adding more packs. I found this little plate here with a hole in it, and it does have a bottom plate right here and it sits at an angle, and if I put that right on there on the bottom shelf in the power rack, it should look pretty decent. It'll look something like that. Of course, the sides do remove, so I want to be able to do that as well if I need to. So I did find a bracket for it, and I'm just going to cut off maybe like 4 inches or so. That way it'll be kind of hidden on the back side. That way I can remove the WatchMon or the expansion board at any time. Alright, we got that mounted on the plate. A little bandsaw was having a little bit of a hard time cutting through this, but it's technically not meant for metal. We got through it by just kind of angling it a little bit. Alright, so to mount this guy, he should be fairly easy. Alrighty, there we go. It is mounted nicely onto this little plate, and it'll sit just like that. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is make a power wire for the WatchMon, and again I'm just going to make it right out of some spare Ethernet wire that I have. So I'm going to make that off camera because all it is just getting some wires, and I'm going to re-sleeve it as well. And I am going to put a fuse on the positive wire because it is recommended. Alright, so I went ahead and made the power wire. I did use a bright orange just because it kind of stands out just a little bit more. If I don't end up liking this, I'll probably change it to the gray, but for now I'm going to go ahead and use the orange. I went ahead and put the positive and negative terminals on the ends here, and I also put an inline fuse just in case anything happens, it'll pop the fuse. And this is a 10 amp fuse, which I will probably change it to maybe a 3 or 5 amp as soon as I get some. Alright, now that I have this made, the next thing I'm going to do, if you're like me and change your mind all the time, in my power wall it's going to change quite a bit because eventually I am going to add more packs. So I didn't want to cut off the plugs off the end of the LongMon wires. So in my kit I got one of these little boards, and this is basically a converter board that changes the plugs from the LongMon wires to wires. So you could basically make your own wires without cutting any of the plugs off. So this is what I plan to use, and I'm probably just going to put it right on the back here somewhere with some hot glue, and that way I can just just run a short wire from the back through the little hole here and right up to the WatchMon. Alright, so I'm gonna just make a small wire off camera so you guys don't have to watch all of that. Alright, so here is the wire that I made. It's roughly 15-16 inches long, and I'm just using the regular Ethernet wire. And in order to hook this up, all you have to do is match up the numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11 to the WatchMon 8, 9, 10, and 11. So all I'm gonna do is basically pick a color for the 8, 9, 10, and 11, and then route it to the underneath side where I'm going to mount the little converter board. Alright, so now that this is all ready to go, we can go ahead and put it in the power wall and we can install the shunt. Alright, so I think I'm going to put the WatchMon right here on this lower shelf. This is a stationary shelf which eventually will get changed out once I start adding more packs, and I'll have to add more drawers. For the time being, I think I'm going to put it in like this right here, and since this is just a temporary location until I do start adding packs, I'm not going to screw this down to the shelf here. I'm just going to put a couple of magnets on the back side and then maybe one right over here, and that should hold it pretty good. I'm going to put a magnet right up here. Now, even though that is pretty sturdy, I'm probably going to add one right over here on this corner, and then I'll probably add one back on this corner here. Much better. And technically right now I can unhook the expansion board because I'm not quite ready to use it, but I'll leave it hooked up for right now. Alright, so before I actually run the power wire or the shunt wires, I'm going to install the shunt. And the shunt needs to be basically connected to the negative battery terminal. You want it to be the first thing that comes off the negative battery. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to put it right here on top of the fuses. And again, these fuses are not permanent. If my circuit breakers ever show up from China, then I'll install those. But for the time being, I'm going to have to use these fuses. So keep that in mind, that this stuff is all going to change later on. Technically, they want this lug right here to go to the battery, so the actual plug is facing away from the battery. For this temporary install, I can't do that because I just don't have enough room for everything this way. So I'm going to have to put it on this way, and technically it does not matter which way you put it on because inside the WatchMon Toolkit software, you can actually reverse how this thing reads. So it doesn't matter which way you put it on. Since these holes don't line up, I'm gonna have to file out the hole right here just a little bit. So let me go do that real quick. Alright, so that is filed out and smoothed out. And also, one thing you need to do is whenever you do install the shunt, whether you have fuses or circuit breakers, you want the shunt to be on the battery side of the fuses or circuit breakers. If for some reason something does happen and these do pop or your circuit breaker trips, it will disconnect the batteries from the UPS or an inverter. The Batrium can still do its job. So I'm going to go ahead and install this right here. Since this is going to be a little tricky to get to this upper terminal here, I'm going to go ahead and attach the wires to the shunt before I put the shunt right here. Alright, I went ahead and mounted the wires on here, and I only used one washer in between the battery terminals. That was to give me a little extra room on the end of the bolt there, and that's because I need to hook up the charge controller voltage sense wires, so I just left it a little bit longer so I could hook it up there. Alright, and this is the positive that comes off the shunt, and that's going to go right on this side of the fuse as well, because this will give you the state of charge. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is run the power wire, and I'm probably just going to kind of drape it over the UPS and then come down the side over here all the way down, and then I'll push it forward to the front where the WatchMon is. And I did make the fuse wire just a little bit too long, so I may end up changing this a little bit later. We'll see. So I'm just going to kind of drape it over here for right now. And I'm also going to do the shunt wire as well, pretty much in the same spot. And again, I'm just gonna drape it over the spot right here because we don't need to hook it up quite yet. Alright, so the next thing that we're gonna do is hook up all the LongMons, and then we'll hook it up to the little converter board on the back of the WatchMon. And then after that, I'll come back here and hook up the positive that comes off of here that's gonna go over to the pack right here, and I'll hook up the negative end to the pack as well. And I'm also going to install the power wire off the shunt. Alright, so the way you hook these LongMons up, the directions tell you to hook up the 2-pin connector first and then the 4-pin. After you hook up the 4-pin, you take the extra 2-pin over to the next LongMon in the daisy chain, and we continue that all the way down. Alright, so for my first connection here, this is going to be my first 2-pin in the daisy chain, and this is the wire that goes all the way down to the WatchMon. Technically on mine it goes to the little converter board and then it goes to the WatchMon, but this is the first one in the chain. So we hook up the 2-pin first, and then we hook up the 4-pin connector, and the green LED turns on and then the red one blinks. Alright, so now we take the next 2-pin over to the next LongMon, and then we take the 4-pin and hook it up, and I'm going to do that the rest of the way down. Alright, so for the last one up here on this drawer is the 4-pin, and then the 2-pin wire snakes all the way around the front, and then it goes through the drag link underneath the shelf to the next battery pack. So that's where we're going next. And here is the 2-pin connector from the number 4 battery up above. So obviously I made my own custom wire here, so all I have to do is make sure I hook up the wires in the correct order. And here later on I'm going to probably straighten up these wires so it looks a little bit nicer, but for now I'll just leave them a little loose. Alright, so next let's go to the other side and hook the WatchMon up to the batteries. And I'm going to hook the negative up to the extra part of the bolt that I installed on the other side of the shunt here. Alright, now that that's hooked up, I'm going to hook up the battery positive first and then the negative. The WatchMon should turn on. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but you can see the red TX light here. I don't think you can see the green one right there. And you do have the status indicator light blinking as well. So the WatchMon is being powered from the batteries. Alright, so let's plug it in here. We'll go check out the software. Alright, so here is the WatchMon Toolkit Software. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm not going to do like a whole thing on the software, but I will just do kind of a quick overview, if you will. I do have another video that I go over how to set up all the WatchMon Toolkit software, so if you do want to see that, I'll link that video down below. This is just going to be like a quick overview, and then that's pretty much it. Okay, so basically after you already have it all set up here on the top left, these two voltages right here, these are going to be your lowest pack voltage and your highest pack voltage. The next two over are going to be the little temperature sensors on the LongMons. These two right here are going to be whenever the LongMons are in bypass mode. It'll give you some times. The next one over obviously is the shunt voltage, and we are at 55.33. Next one over tells you how many amps you're pulling from your batteries. And yes, it does have a negative here. That is because I am drawing 4.4 amps from the batteries. A lot of people usually will reverse the way the shunt reads just to get rid of this minus here, but technically this is the correct way that it's hooked up. The next one over is the shunt watts. Basically your volts times amps is your watts. The next one over I have set up for the discharge rate. Of course, all of these up here and along this side, you can change those, which I could show you real quick. This is just how I have it set up. The normal stock setup is just a little bit different. This is just how I customize it. Anyway, the next one down shows you your state of charge, your capacity until empty, charge rate, and this right here is my estimate until it is fully charged. And then of course the supply voltage right here as well. I don't remember what USN is. And the next one down here is a time for how long I've been running this day, so a total of 2 hours and 14 minutes. But I can show you real quick. If you want to change all of these settings right up here, you just click on the little gear right down here. You can change the axis and the axis minimum. That's this line right here and this line right here. If you want those to go up or down or to be a little bit closer to the cells that you have, then you can do that. Of course, some temperatures, and you could either show or remove the axis or the guidelines, and that's like I was saying before. The bypass chart, again, you can change some of those settings if you want to. You don't have to. But if you want to change what all of these read, basically all you're doing is clicking on these and going through the list here and picking what you want. And of course you can change the color on there as well, which I did change these two and these ones right over here. So that would be the top row, and then of course the right side is right over here. And I changed a couple of those as well. Just make sure you hit the save button when you're done. Other than that, I mean, this is pretty much it. I have mine set up to go up to about 4.08. That's on a pretty regular basis. If I'm gonna be doing a big capacity check or something like that, I'll raise it all the way up to 4.2. And after the capacity test, I'll bring it back to the 4.05 or 4.08 voltage range. Otherwise, I mean, this is the badass screen that everybody wants to see. So boom! Alrighty, well, I mean, that was pretty much everything that I did with mine. I know there was one little part where I forgot to record, or maybe I just didn't get it in the video. I'm not exactly sure, but all I did was put the shunt connector onto the shunt. I didn't show that, but I put a little note in there. This is where you connect the shunt on top. I don't know how I missed it, but I did. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. The Batrium system is freaking amazing. Now, the whole Batrium system is really not that hard to install. It's just a little bit daunting when you have all the pieces in front of you. You're not exactly sure where it's supposed to go or the correct order that things are supposed to be installed in. I know, I get it, I was there, but now that it's all installed, it's really not that bad, and I can probably do it all, well, I don't want to say blindfolded, but if you guys do have any questions about the install, or you have a question, I don't know anything about the WatchMon 4 or the new shunt, obviously, because I don't have it, but if you have any other questions on how to install things or whatever, please leave a comment down below and I'll try to help you out as best as I can. Obviously, I am not the smartest with the Batrium system, but I think I could handle a few questions. If you do want to get a starter kit, I will leave the link down below on the 14S kit that I got. Of course, it'll just be the newer version with the WatchMon 4 and the newer shunt. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. Some of it is a little time consuming if you're trying to make it look really nice with all the extra sleeving. Again, if you guys do want some of the sleeving, I can leave a link down below as well. I did use the 1/8 inch sleeving, which is really tight. It's kind of a pain to get it through, but it is doable. If I were to do it all over again, if I did anything different, I would probably go to maybe a 3/16 or a 1/4 just to give you a little bit more wiggle room, but I am pretty happy with what I got right there. I do kind of like the bright orange sleeving just because it kind of stands out. Not that it's high voltage or anything like that. I just thought it kind of looked a little bit cool. Oh, and I still need to shorten up the fuse area because I made that just way too long. I don't know what I was thinking there. Oh, and I did finally get the circuit breakers from China. They did not fall off the boat. So I'm gonna have to, I guess, install those here pretty quick too. All right, well that's all I got for this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Gotta get ready for the video. I was just kidding. I feel like I do need to stretch though. How to Canuck, and then crimp them. But technically you could shove them in. I'll have to slide the heat because I'll have to, so I'm just going to here, right. You can see the USB on it of the, well, it'll measure the amps going through, but the software from the, or if you have my little this is a hello Horace. Right when I start recording. Hi buddy. Yep. Are you gonna focus or what, dude? I'm not going to. And hi bud. And says I'm already messing it up.